Sheryl Sandberg is a best-selling author, a business leader, a philanthropist, and chief operating officer of Facebook. Her best-selling book, Lean In, Women, Work, and the Will to Lead, influenced millions of women to commit to their careers in a meaningful and complete way, and led her to found leanin.org. Hello, leanin.org? Anyone out from? Yeah, thank you. An organization dedicated to empowering all women to achieve their ambitions. It now has a worldwide community of over 500,000 people in 123 countries. Adam Grant is a professor at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, a psychologist, and author of bestsellers The Originals and Give and Take. His work focuses on the search for meaning and motivation and examines and elucidates ways we can live more generous and more creative lives. Their new book together, Option B, Facing Adversity, Building Resilience, and Finding Joy, works to create a whole new conversation around resilience and the steps we can take to building strong, surviving hearts. I know that every person in this room has had a moment where it felt impossible to move through seemingly impossible grief. I know I have. By sharing the loss that Sheryl felt at the unexpected loss of her husband, and through narratives of other survivors and Adam's far-reaching research on resilience, Sheryl and Adam have created a roadmap through the impossible. Sheryl and Adam will be in conversation tonight with Daniel Pink. Daniel is the author of best-selling books, including A Whole New Mind, Drive, and To Sell is Human, which provided new perspectives into the changing workplace, management, motivation, and behavioral science. Sheryl, Adam, and Daniel do the necessary and the generous work of mapping the human heart, and we are indebted to them for sharing their insights with us. Please help me welcome Sheryl Sandberg, Adam Grant, and Daniel Pink to Sixth and I.
Well, welcome everybody. This will be an interesting night, so let's get straight to it. Welcome back to Sixth and I. Both of you are Sixth and I veterans. So anybody else, have anybody here been to Sixth and I before? All right. I'll take that as a yes. So Sheryl, page 12. I can't see page 12. Hold on. Page 12. You see, this book is about the capacity of the human spirit to persevere. What do you mean by that?
The book is about how we face things that are hard, and we move on, we move forward. Sometimes we take 3 steps back, but we persevere. How we get through things that we can't imagine, we can't expect, we can't predict, and we can't control.
So tell us about the title. Because the title of this book is such a wonderfully evocative title. Tell us how the title came to be.
Almost 2 years ago, maybe 2 years ago Monday, my husband Dave died incredibly suddenly. We were at a 50th birthday party in Mexico for my friend Phil Deutsch, who used to live in Washington. A lot of people here knew. And it's the unimaginable. Sudden death. I flew home to tell my children, they were 7 and 10, that they wouldn't see their father again. And I felt like the grief, which I had never experienced. It was like a void. It was closing in on me. My brother-in-law, Rob, Dave's only sibling, talked about it as a boot on his chest. And I thought it would never get better. And I didn't know what to do. And so I called my friend Adam, the psychologist friend, right? And I said, what do I do? How do I get my kids through this? How do I get myself through this? And what I learned is that we don't have a set amount of resilience, we can build it. A few weeks later, and I learned that over a long period of time, but a few weeks after Dave died, Phil and I were sitting around talking about a father-son activity that Dave wasn't around to do. And we came up with options to fill in for my son. But I said, I don't want those, I want Dave. I want Dave to go to this. They signed up together. It's just so amazing and crazy that Dave's not here. And he said, option A is not available. So let's just kick the shit out of option B. And
Now, I just want to point out that
I'm in a synagogue.
that word. No, but here's the thing.
But my rabbi's totally not here.
Yeah. But let me.
I don't know the rabbi.
Let me see you and raise you. All right. I'm a lawyer, and as I look up at the Ten Commandments, the word shit is not prohibited. So, therefore, I think we're all right. So that's where you came to option B, and so this is a book about how do you navigate option B. What did you, when Adam reached out to you, when you reached out to Adam, what are some things you learned from Adam and his research? What was some of the first things that Adam did for you?
Well, the first thing was he taught me what the 3 Ps were.
Okay, talk to us about the 3 Ps.
I'll let you hear it right from
Adam,
the guy
the 3
who taught
Ps.
us.
Go for the 3 Ps. Well, actually, let me ask Adam directly. He happens to be here, so let's ask him.
Yeah, great.
Adam, you did something actually quite remarkable that you guys write about in the book, where you said to her,
I said one of the things that Sheryl should do is she should imagine how this could be worse. And she she looked at me like I was an idiot.
He's one of the smartest people I've ever met, and I thought he was a total idiot. I mean, I looked at him like, my husband just died. I walked into a gym and found my husband on the floor, and later learned he was dead. I mean, how worse? And he said, you should think about what, I said, what could be worse? And he said, Dave could have had that same cardiac arrhythmia driving your children. And you say that, and immediately I was like, I'm good. And I wasn't good.
No, of course.
But the thought that I could have lost all of them, that happens. There are probably people here who have lost multiple people at
Absolutely.
once. And the fact that it automatically shifted to thinking about what was still good in my life, which is one of the 3 Ps.
right. So let's go back to the 3 Ps there. So one of it is what you're counseling her to do is, or what you're advising her to do is put it in context. It could be worse. It sounds kind of cold, but it's actually, there's research on this. Is that right?
Yeah, one of the traps that we fall into is something goes wrong in our lives, and we start to, first we personalize it. We're like, this is all my fault. And secondly, we say this is pervasive, which is, this is gonna ruin every part of my life. And then the third piece is permanence. This is gonna be stuck with me forever. I'm always gonna feel this way. And then it becomes like the ugly version of that song, Everything is Awesome. It's just, everything is awful over and over and over again. And, you know, I think Sheryl fell into all of those traps as any of us would. And I think the biggest challenge then was to say, all right, how do you get out first of personalization? She was saying sorry all the time. Like it was in almost every sentence. She would call me and she'd say, I'm really sorry to bother you. And I'm like, who is this? And then eventually I realized it's Sheryl, and she couldn't stand, being difficult or being a burden. And I just kept telling her, look, you did not, interrupt anyone's life. Tragedy did. Like this happened to you. It didn't happen because of you.
Right. So the first P is personal. So don't personalize it. The second P is
pervasiveness.
Okay. So, and the third one is
permanence.
So from that, how do you? Because I'm sure that even now beforehand, you met with a group of people. You're in your book tour. You're going around talking to people who have suffered from various kinds of tragedies, helping them become resilient. Option B is not only a book, it's a movement about how to help people do that. So when you talk to people, how do you deploy the 3 Ps?
Well, part of it is about finding self-compassion.
Okay.
I had so much to feel bad about. I felt bad Dave died. I felt bad that I didn't diagnose coronary artery disease. It took me a while to get over that. When I convinced my family convinced me, I'm the only person in my family not a doctor. It's like, how could you diagnose it? I then felt bad that my mother's here. She gave up her life for a month to live with me. My closest friends were here. They all were flying out. I couldn't do client meetings. I was at work 4 hours a day, not 8 or 9. I felt terrible. And then I started thinking about what I would have done if I had known Dave and I had 11 years. Morning he died, we were on a trip, so we went on a hike. He hiked with the guys, I hiked with the women. Like I thought so often about just taking back that hike, like, shouldn't I have walked with him? And what Adam said was, if you do not cut this out, your kids cannot recover because you cannot recover. And so I realized Dave and I had an incredible marriage, but we had fights, spending time worrying about every fight we had, because why would we fight if we only had 11 years? That's not realistic. And it's not just the things that aren't our fault, it's the things that are. We have lots of examples in the book of people that had to recover from things that were their fault, but you have to be kind to yourself.
Give us an example of that.
I mean,
There are a lot of good examples. One of them is actually here. Tim Chambers got an email about a year ago from Tim's wife, Kim, and she said, I wanted you to know about my husband. And I clicked on a link, and there were these beautiful portraits. And I then found out he was legally blind. And if he's looking in your eye, he can't see your mouth. And he will physically memorize all the details of you in order to paint you. And when Tim got diagnosed with this condition at 30, he could have just said, all right, this is terrible, I chose the wrong profession. He had a physician who said, you better give up your calling and find another one. And instead he said, look, I'm going to recognize that, I can't necessarily see the difference between purple and gray, but there's still things that I can do with this talent that I have. And one of the things that he did with it was he went and started teaching online art classes. And it was so inspiring to see that there were students in Australia waking up at 2 a.m. In order to take a course with him. And I think what that speaks to here is that when you're kind to yourself, when you accept your limitations, your mistakes, your challenges, you're more likely to not only bounce back, but sometimes bounce forward.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting idea from the book. You guys write about this. It's something that I had never heard of. That is, some people in the face of trauma will suffer deeply. PTSD, other kinds of serious ailments. Some people will bounce back. But tell us about bouncing forward. What does that mean? What does that look like when someone bounces forward?
So the basic idea is that when something tragic happens, there are positive changes in your life that come after it. And not saying the tragedy is good, right? Anybody who's gone through tragedy would give pretty much anything to undo it and be able to go back. But along with the sadness or the grief or whatever negative emotions accompany the bad experience are some improvements. Sometimes people walk away with a greater sense of personal strength or gratitude or new or deeper relationships. And then there's also more meaning and purpose. I was a little hesitant to talk with Sheryl about this because in the first weeks I could see her just saying, wait, now you're saying I don't have to just recover, I have to grow from this experience? What a jerk. But eventually, I think it becomes one of the most powerful lenses that you can apply to hardship, to say, look, there are ways, even though I didn't want this to happen, this is going to make me a stronger, better person.
and it does. I mean, my kids have more perspective. I'm much calmer about the small stuff. My son, the other day, his basketball team lost the playoffs. And a lot of the other little boys were super upset if you were crying, and I looked at him and said, "Are you okay?" "Mom, this is 6th grade basketball." But then he just kind of looked at his friends, he's like, "They don't know." And he's strong. I mean, I wouldn't wish this perspective on anyone, but being able to weather the small things in life, know you can get through them, is a good thing. Gratitude. It is the most ironic, craziest thing to come through the worst experience of your life, to sit here knowing I'll never see Dave again, and feel more grateful, not less. And it's not that I feel more grateful for everything. I still have the grief. I still get angry sometimes. We're in a place of worship. I question things that I didn't question before. How can God let this happen to someone so wonderful? But it never occurred to me Dave wouldn't grow old. I used to make jokes about growing older, as if I didn't want to. Who makes those jokes? "Oh my God, I'm turning 30. You know, no. If I give everyone one thing tonight, no. Because there's only two choices. We either grow older or we don't. My cousin Laura turned 50 a few months ago, and I called her and I said, "I'm calling to say happy birthday, but I'm also calling because in case you woke up this morning with the 'oh my God, I'm 50' thing, this is the year Dave won't turn 50. And I now celebrate every birthday. My kids have, my friends have, I have since Dave died, because I don't take them for granted. And that kind of meaning does, in fact, make your life deeper. And then I wish anything, I could just live a day, a week, with that kind of appreciation with Dave. And I can't, but we can try to talk about it and build community and help other people celebrate their birthdays.
One of the things that helped you in a remarkable way was journaling. And that's the effectiveness of journaling surprised me. Your output also surprised me. You wrote, what is it, 106,000 words. Being an overachiever, you wrote 106,000 words. What did journaling do for you, particularly this idea that you write about of journaling for joy?
Well, I'd always wanted to keep a journal, aspirationally. I have a box of them. They start, January 1st and they end January 5th of every year, literally. And then I start a new one because this one's going to be good, and I just didn't finish them. And after Dave died, I started writing, and if I didn't write for 2 days, 3 days, I felt like I was going to burst. And I didn't know the research then, but later, after I finished that journal, which was 5 or so months until what would have been Dave's birthday, I learned the research when we were doing the research for the book on journaling. And now I do a different kind of journaling, which Adam suggested, which is I write down 3 moments of joy before I go to bed. And I started this a long time ago when joy was hard to come by. Mm-hmm. And one thing I learned from Adam is that I think we think happiness is the big stuff. Getting a promotion, having a kid, going on a big trip. But happiness is our daily lives. And so, my cup of coffee tasted great. Mm. My kids gave me a hug without being asked. Mm-hmm. And
when was that?
Not too long ago. But because I'm gonna write it down at the end of the day, I notice those moments. And I realized before this, I went to bed every night worrying about what went wrong, what I was gonna mess up the next day, what I messed up that day. But now, I think about the moments of joy and I notice them. When something happens, I say, that's gonna make the notebook. And that's also, I would trade it all. I would trade all the growth, all the learning, all the gratitude to have Dave back. But it does change, it changes my life in a pretty important way.
So we've talked about how you responded here. I think one of the most fascinating things to me reading this book is when you talk about other people. And all of us have been in situations where someone in our life has experienced something unspeakably tragic. And at least, if I can extrapolate from my own reaction, one sometimes feels uneasy. What do you say? What do you do? And I think that there's some just wonderful guidance to other people in dealing with those who've suffered from tragedy. What is some of your advice for that?
Well, I think one of our big frustrations when we were writing is there's a huge self-help section in every bookstore. There's no help others section. And it's not clear that the self-help section actually helps anybody. So, yeah. But we wanted to write about what can you do if you have a friend who's struggling or suffering. And the thing that was so clear watching Sheryl go through this is just how hard it is for people to even bring it up.
Right.
I felt like she was surrounded by silence. And I remember her saying one day, there are people who literally saw me for the first time a few weeks later and they didn't even ask how I was doing.
Yeah.
What's going on there? And the only thought I had was they just didn't know what to say.
Right.
And they were afraid of saying the wrong thing. And so I think we all need probably better vocabulary for what do we say. And Sheryl gave some great advice in a Facebook post that she wrote.
I think there's some really great practical advice on that. So some people will say to you, how are you doing? That's not the right thing to say.
Well, almost the way you said it there, it is. It's, how are you?
Yeah.
I just got diagnosed with cancer. My husband just died. I lost a child. The standard American, how are you, with a smile, the way we deliver it, feels hard.
Right.
And no one probably does it on purpose, and I know that because I did that.
Of course.
How are you today? Or what you just did, how are you? That's actually a very different thing. That is, I'm trying to ask how you are.
Well, what I think is interesting, and it's just helpful to me, and because we all deal with people who are grieving, we all deal with people who are suffering. Like that to me is something I'm going to use from this book. Instead of saying, how are you doing? What you recommended is, how are you doing today? Because it's a day-to-day struggle.
That's right. And acknowledging the pain. And I understand this because before I lost Dave, if I saw someone going through something hard, the first time I saw them, I would acknowledge it. But then I would not bring it up again because I thought I was reminding them. Ridiculous. You can't remind me I lost Dave. When someone says, I'm sorry you lost your husband, I'm not like, oh, I forgot. Bummer, you just reminded me. Oh, I didn't know I had cancer. Yeah. Damn, brought that right back. No. And so all of these topics bring this huge elephant into the room.
Right.
But here's what you can say. I don't know if you want to talk or not, but I know this is super hard, and I'm here for you. Another mistake I made before is, and this is so common, and I think I did it with good intentions, is there anything I can do?
Yeah.
I've said it to 100 people. I meant that. The problem is when you're on the other side of that question, it kind of shifts the burden to the person who's being asked, well, can you make Father's Day disappear because it sucks and it comes every year? No. But if you actually just do something, even if you do the wrong thing, action is so loud. My dear friends, Dan and Esther Levy, they lost a child, their son, and it was horrible, and they were in the hospital for months. And a friend texted him and said, what do you not want on a burger? Another friend said, I'm in the lobby of the hospital, whether you want to come down for a hug, whether you come down or not. And a friend of mine read the book 2 weeks ago before it came out. I gave her an early copy. And she has a friend, not a good friend, like a distant-y kind of friend, whose daughter is in the hospital with leukemia. And she said before she read the book, she would have done nothing. They're not close friends. But she read the book.
Yeah.
So she went to a toy store. She bought a toy. She had the woman sell. She texted from the lobby of the hospital, hey, I brought a toy. I'm going to leave it here. I'm here for the next 15 minutes. The mother texted her right back, said, please come up. She gave the 4-year-old the toy, and she said the mother was behind the 4-year-old, just tears streaming down her face, like, thank you for showing up. Like the power of showing up. I can't tell you how many people said to me, oh, I'm sorry I didn't say anything. I figured we weren't good enough friends. No, they meant it well. But if someone is going through something in your life, you do not have to be their friend from first grade to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
You don't. You can say, I know you're suffering.
I have to say, I mean, for me, and I'll be curious, the feedback you get from readers, that was, in some ways, a life-altering section of the book, because I felt like I was so maladroit at doing this, because I didn't want to remind them or aggravate the pain, and so I think there's some great tools there.
There's something else there which I think is really important, is that and I want to be clear, everyone goes through grief in their own way, so there is no one right way. So for any piece of advice we give, someone's not going to like it or someone's going to have a different reaction. So our advice is to ask, do you want to talk? Do you want to come down? Not to impose. But one of the things I think people who haven't been through real loss don't understand is how much you sometimes want to talk about the person.
Interesting.
We have talked now to so many parents who lost children. People do not talk about lost children. They think they're reminding them. And when you look at someone now, I look at someone, I'm like, I know you lost a child. What was she like?
I know.
Do you have a picture? Everyone so far has broken out a picture and been so glad.
Well, you have this heartbreaking line in the book where someone says, a child dies a second time when no one speaks their name.
I went to dinner with a group of friends, a couple friends who were not really close with each other, but close with me about a year after Dave died. And they all went around the table and did that thing couples do, which is they told the story of how they met, the cute thing couples do. And then they got to me and they skipped me. And of course they skipped me. No, let's be clear. No one asked someone who lost her husband, so how'd you meet Dave? But when they skipped me, I did what you do in these situations. I pretended I was sick and went home. Not the right way to handle it.
I'll take that as a clue if it happens in the next half hour.
But I realized that no one is ever going to ask me how I met Dave again.
Yeah.
Because they think it's cruel. Which means I'll never get to tell that story. So I called my friend Tracy, who lost her husband, who I'm just getting to know, and I was like, Tracy, how'd you meet your husband? And she told me, and we promised each other that we would always ask anyone we met who's in our club no one wants to be in, like, how'd you meet?
Yeah. Well, you tell the story in the book of how you and Dave met. Do you want to tell it for us? Because it took him a while to get on the program. Yeah. I mean, that's my take. My takeaway is like, man, this guy's like, you're lucky you Adam?
No, I still want to know, like, how did the friends have the intuition to not ask Sheryl, but still bring the subject up in the first place? Like, let's why don't we all talk about how we met our still alive spouses?
Yeah. Right.
But, look, the most common thing people say to me, the most common thing, and this happens twice a week. I will say to someone, how are you? And they will say, man or woman, I'm really tired. My husband's away for work this week. Or I'm exhausted. You know, my wife's been gone for 2 days and I'm taking care of the kids. Twice a week, someone says that to me.
Yeah.
And I just look at them like, you can't have just said that to me. And I realize, but I've yet to say anything.
Yeah.
Actually, because I don't even though I wrote this book, I don't know what to say. Hey, my husband's gone forever.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say, but I think people don't realize.
Yeah, I think the takeaway from that for all of you out here is don't do that. So do you want to talk about how you met Dave? I find it fascinating that it took a while for this whole thing to
Come together.
gel.
Yeah. I was in LA. I was working.
So you just moved to LA, is that right?
I just moved to LA. I didn't know many people. I was dating someone, but he was out of town, so I went to a movie and dinner with a friend from work who brought his friend Dave. They were friends from Minneapolis growing up there. And we went to dinner, and we went to a movie, and I fell asleep on Dave's shoulder. And Dave thought that meant I was really into him, but he learned later I will sleep on any movie on any shoulder.
Right, okay.
Not always the person I came with, just some people don't like it.
Strangers, yeah.
Pretty much.
Adam, watch out for your shoulder. Yeah.
No, I've slept on Adam's shoulder many times. But then, years later, we were really good friends, we were best friends, and then years later, we dated.
6 years later, not just a little bit. I mean, I started to harp on this, but it was a while. But then when you started dating, how long did you decide to get married?
You're in your 30s, you date your best friend, you're either going to break up and ruin the relationship or get married. So
Right.
we got married.
Or sell the screenplay rights.
Or sell the screenplay rights.
Let me ask you a strange question here. So what I found interesting is you had a lot of support from your friends, from your family. One of the takeaways here, one of the interesting things here is that it made me think about support in a different way, because there are several instances where you literally have trouble standing, and the people who care about you come and help you stand. Please discuss.
No, many.
No, I mean,
no, many.
but it made me think about support in a different way. I mean, let me ask you a question. How do you think about support? Because it seems like you have one of the great things about, I think, your life here is that you had so many people who offered you that kind of support, and in many cases it was literal, helping you stand up.
I mean, so one of the ways you grow post-traumatic growth is deeper relationships.
Uh-huh.
And I am a truly lucky person. My parents are here. They've been unbelievable my whole life. I have a group of 6 girlfriends I've been friends with since elementary school. 3 are here tonight.
Oh.
I have an amazing
This is like a State of the Union. They're sitting up there.
college friends. I do. I have a lot of
Wow.
friends here tonight. I feel so lucky for that. And, you know, I thought I was as close to them as possible. I had a very close family, very close friendships. Nothing like I am today. And it's because I really needed them. I mean, for 5 months, until Dave's birthday, until I made a decision that I was no longer going to do it, I couldn't walk into my bedroom myself. Because when I tried, I literally flopped. I just could not walk into that room. And so my mom stayed for a month and literally would get in bed with me, almost like putting a child to bed. And then my sister did it and my friends flew out.
Yeah.
And the kindest of them, and these people are incredible, are the ones who didn't only do it, I felt like such a burden. And I was. I mean, Adam can say all day I wasn't a burden, but I think I was. I mean, I needed...
False.
I needed so much help, but they made me feel like they wanted to be there. My brother, he's a pediatric neurosurgeon. He's busy. He does 12-hour operations.
Yeah.
He called me every day.
Yeah.
Almost a year. And when I said to him, David, you don't have to call me every day, he said, I'm calling you for me. He said, I don't feel okay unless I know I've spoken to you. My sister was exhausted. Her kids get up super early. I wouldn't fall asleep till midnight, so she was just exhausted night after night. And I said, Michelle, you have to go home. And she said, I can't sleep unless you're asleep. And they made me feel like they were doing it for them. My friends Katie and Scott showed up with a pie chart and said, we're not getting our share of the nights. No one wanted those nights.
Yeah.
I promise.
There's another piece of this story, though, which is any one of Sheryl's friends knows that part of the reason these people were all showing up and stepping up is because she is on the giving end of every single relationship she's in. Like she takes care of everyone. She's incredibly generous with her advice and her support. And I think she's built these relationships where there's so much closeness and trust because of that generosity. And I think part of what I watched her learn through this is that being a friend is not just about what you can give, it's also about what you can receive. And actually allowing her friends for once to be able to step up and help her was kind of a big step. There's one question here since we're in a synagogue. Your brother's a neurosurgeon, your sister's a pediatrician. So how disappointed are your parents in you?
It's pretty bad. You're right there, absolutely. And my dad's a doctor, too.
Your dad's a doctor, too. So what's
And my sister-in-law.
Mom and dad, disappointment level, high, low? You guys are good? All right. Okay, low. All right. All right.
They don't get to say my daughter's a doctor.
They don't.
I probably get said a lot here.
Yeah.
People in synagogues like to say that.
Yes. In fact, that's what it says in Hebrew right above there. Let's move on. Adam, one of the big takeaways from the research, one of the big insights from the research, which I think is probably the most conceptual, the most important conceptual idea in the book is that, and it applies very much to children. I want to talk about kids here for a moment. You say that resilience isn't a fixed trait. It's a muscle that we can help build and that we can help our kids build. Explain that to us.
Yeah, I think a lot of people believe that your resilience is either something you're born with or it's something that was kind of shaped by your early life experience, and you're kind of stuck with it from there. I know when Sheryl and I first started talking about resilience, her question to me was, how do I know how much I have? Like, how do I know if I'm a resilient person? I was like, I don't know. Yeah. Like, the better question is, how do I become more resilient wherever I am? And when you think about how to build kids' resilience, I think one of the most important things that I've learned is kids need to feel that they matter. And mattering's the answer to a basic question, which is, do I have significance to other people? When kids feel they matter, they feel like other people notice them, care about them, and rely on them. And the consequences of kids feeling like they don't matter are really devastating. Right? They're much more likely to be delinquent, more aggressive. They end up having less secure relationships, and of course, much higher depression too. And I think that this is important for any child, right? Kids face challenges. Sometimes they're really big and serious, but other times, it's failing a test or, maybe missing your lines in a school play. And I think the single most important thing we can do as parents is really engage our kids in experiences and conversations that convey mattering. So I saw this actually. When I started getting to know Sheryl was when Dave invited me over for dinner. And I sat at a family dinner, and the first thing that Sheryl's 7-year-old daughter did was she asked me how my day was. And I was like, you're 7. Like, what? Who does this?
She then didn't listen to the answer, but she knew she was supposed to ask.
Oh, okay. It's a start.
It's a start.
Yeah.
We encourage it.
But it was so clear that their kids that they had taught their kids to make sure that other people felt that they mattered. And I think that teaching your kids to ask questions is one of the ways that they sort of reflect out that thing that you want them to feel. Right.
You write a chapter about resilience in kids, and it's really quite remarkable on a number of different levels. You put up, shortly after Dave's death, a sign, family rules. Can you tell us about that? There's a photograph of it in the book. It's a gorgeous, it's such a gorgeous photograph because it's a sign written in kids' handwriting, not rife with misspellings, but
there's a lot of misspellings.
Speckled with misspellings.
Yeah, it is the real picture.
Yeah.
A few days.
What are they, and what role did they play in your life?
My friend Carol Geithner counsels grieving children, and I was reminded of that by a mutual friend on the way home from the trip, and I called her and asked her what to say, and thank God, because I would have gotten so much of it wrong, and I would have been so shocked. But a few days into that, we put out family rules just based on stuff I had heard from her and from other people who lost parents, and the first was respect your feelings. It's okay to be sad, it's okay to be angry, it's okay to be jealous. Jealous of other children, but even of me, because I still have a father. Something that's just unbelievable, but also breaks my heart in that, I'm 47, and my children lost theirs at 7 and 10, so it's okay. I understand that you're jealous of that. I feel for that. And also, it's okay to be happy I heard from Carol, and I talked to a number of people who had lost parents as young children, and they said they felt guilty feeling happy. And so I said, it's okay to be happy. And the other part of the family rule was ask for help. And we have 4 little sections, and I noticed writing the book that it was in all 4 sections. And we cannot get through this alone. You know, teaching a 10-year-old boy that he was going to be in class, in math class, and just start crying, and he needed to leave the class, take a friend with him, and cry. Ask for that help is a hard thing to do. But he did it, and he had no choice because he couldn't not cry. And
this point about respecting feelings, it's so interesting, like what ancient wisdom that is. Your rabbi actually encouraged you to do that.
my rabbi told me to lean into the suck. Not what I meant when I said lean in, and I think this crowd will appreciate this. I said that last night on the Colbert Show, and Stephen Colbert said, I think that's in the Talmud. Now, I'm not a great Talmudic scholar, but I feel fairly certain.
And he's Catholic. So
Yes, I don't know why he's bringing
I
out
wouldn't
the Talmud.
trust his Talmudic wisdom there.
But it was really good advice, because what he was telling me, I think we often fight our feelings, even before this, but
Well,
much more.
you guys took cry breaks. You talk about cry breaks.
I still take cry breaks.
Yeah.
We talk about cry breaks. I also think of what I think of as the second derivative of feelings, right? You get sad, and then you're sad, you're sad. You get nervous or anxious, and then you're anxious, you're anxious.
Right.
Just accepting, of course I'm sad.
Right.
And letting it come, it was easier to deal with.
We've never talked about this, but does that work in the
It's
positive?
a great place to start.
Yeah. But no, does it work in the positive direction too? Like you're happy, and then you're happy that you're happy. Do you find that when you capture your 3 moments of joy?
Yeah, now I'm
Oh,
happy,
interesting.
I'm happy.
Right. I think it's interesting that you refer to this as the second derivative.
Catchphrase,
Only
catchphrase.
only an MBA
love
would think
that.
about it as a second derivative. Yeah. Second derivative. Well, first derivative is the rate of change. Second derivative is the rate of change, more or less. And so this is basically, if you notice your feelings, that second derivative can drive the feelings one way or another, either negative, as you suggest, or Adam is speculating, as he's wont to do, positive.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, it's actually quite fascinating. You also have another technique that you use, which I think is fantastic. I'm going to borrow it. Fast double sorries.
We
What
learned
are
that at
those?
the Girls Leadership Institute.
Okay, talk
we
to
do
us.
these workshops. My daughter and I went to the mommy-daughter one. And it's fast double sorry. So we make mistakes all the time. Kids get into a fight. You say sorry, I say sorry. We do it quickly. We forgive each other. We move on.
Do we say it simultaneously?
Not usually. Usually I say sorry for a specific thing. I'm sorry for this. You say I'm sorry for this. And then we move on. We were all sad, and we were all angry, and we were all not sleeping, and there was a lot of screaming and crying, and I made a lot of mistakes. I had a lot to apologize for myself. And my kids had a lot more fights than they had before. And so the fast double sorry became a really important tool.
One of the many poignant scenes in the book is the way you spend what would have been, you and your children spend what would have been Dave's 48th birthday. Tell us how you guys spent his birthday.
48th, yeah, it would have been his son. So we wrote letters and balloons, and we sent them up.
Wrote letters to Dave,
In
each of you.
balloons, we sent them up. My daughter at the time thought it was wonderful. Daddy was going to get a letter from her. My son said, this is going to land in someone's lawn. We didn't do it the second year because by then my son had explained to my daughter that it was going to land in someone's lawn. But what we are doing is we have a kid poker tournament in Dave's honor. We did it both years so far, and we're planning it already for the 3rd year.
Fantastic.
And that is a wonderful way. And it's interesting. I just had a very meaningful moment right before I left on this trip. May 1st is Monday. It's the 2nd anniversary of Dave's death. And we've found a way to try to celebrate the day he was born, to celebrate other things. But I just kept saying to them, no celebration. I cannot celebrate May 1st. I can get through it. You can go to school or not. I'll stay home with you, whatever you want, but no celebration. And I think maybe because they prefer celebrations to the public service and community service projects I come up with that will help us honor their father for the day, they came back to me with, well, we can celebrate that we're okay. And we
Your
can
kids came up with that.
Yeah.
Wow.
We're still doing the community service project in the afternoon. But it got shorter.
Yeah, good.
And I'm letting them
You get one more, community service is done.
I'm letting them have our family friends over, and not a party exactly, but a celebration that we're okay.
Yeah.
And I could not figure out how to make that day okay. And my kids, I mean, it's still not okay, but it's much better than it was before they came up with that idea.
Sure. There is also sort of embedded in here is the importance of certain kinds of rituals. One ritual that you have at your family dinner table is you go around and tell us about that.
We do our best and our worst. Everyone says their best and their worst of the day. And then when Dave died, I added in gratitude. What are we grateful for? To this day, my son every single day says his worst is always the same. My daughter doesn't always. Sometimes she forgets. I would say probably 3 or 4 times he's forgotten, and then he's joyful. Oh my God, I had a moment of remembering, but that hasn't happened yet.
So you each go around and say what your best part of the day, worst part of the day.
We did this before Dave died. Best part of the day, worst part of the day.
And now something that you're grateful for, right?
We also pray. We used to do the prayer of the bread on Shabbat only, but we do it now every night. Just something to be grateful for the food that's in front of us.
All right. So let's shift gears a little bit. You also write that love is the third rail, right? The third rail that we, the topic's so charged that we avoid touching it. So let's touch it.
Love after a spouse
Love
dies.
after a spouse dies.
Yeah, and
Very fraught topic, and some differences among the way that people perceive men and women.
Yeah, so when a spouse dies, dating afterwards, trying to find love again, is hard. I mean, hard for anyone. Dating wasn't that much fun the first time. And not something I ever wanted to do again. I mean, I know what I wanted, which is to spend my life with Dave, but I don't get to do that. And we judge women much more harshly than men for dating. Men date more frequently, men date sooner, and men face much less criticism. And I definitely face some criticism. The people closest to me were very supportive, especially Dave's mother and brother. They had lost their father. Incredible. But I think when we think about helping people recover from grief, we think about holding them, we'll think about letting them cry, we think about asking them how are them today, we think about bringing them food in the hospital. But we need to think about the other side too, which is helping them feel like they can still do their job, supporting them if they choose to date, finding humor. The other third rail of grief is
Absolutely.
humor. Jokes, not just jokes in general, but jokes about death. I had the most incredible experience recently. I met a man who's a wounded warrior who lost both his legs in Afghanistan. And he is resilient. He is joyful and grateful and doing great things and still in active service. It was incredible. And I just asked him how. I said, how is it possible? How are you so resilient? And he said, I made my first joke minutes after I lost my legs. He said the bomb went off, and minutes later he said, well, I found the bomb. But he talked about humor and dark humor.
Yeah.
I now understand why we tell jokes at funerals. Because it gives us that minute of control, that minute of I can still laugh. And if you want to help someone recover, hold them while they cry, but tell them they can laugh. Help them laugh because they need that permission.
What does the research say about laughter, humor, and this?
It says that you should make people really bad J-date profiles, and that's one of the best ways to help them after loss. No, the evidence is incredible, actually. It says that when surgery patients watch comedies, they actually request less pain medication. It also says that if you just look at how frequently and naturally people laugh after loss, you can predict their recovery rates and their resilience. And Dan, actually, this is something that you investigated a long time ago. You went to a laughing club, if I remember?
Oh yeah, a long time ago, yeah.
Are you going to tell us about that?
I did. I thought I was on the Q end of the Q&A here.
Yeah. I'm breaking the script. I want to hear about how to bring more laughter into our lives here.
Well, there are these, the idea of laughter without humor, laughter itself, the actual physical act of laughter is actually very therapeutic. And there are clubs around led by an Indian physician where people get together and they just laugh. They go, ho, ho, ha, 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 ho, which sounds preposterous, but it makes you laugh, right? And so it started in India, and so but it's interesting. I think this idea of humor and laughter is quite fascinating. Do you think, we'll ask a philosophical question here. Someone has said that comedy is tragedy plus time. Does that make any sense?
But humor is really important, and permission. I remember my friend Brooke is here, actually. He's in the book, and I went to a friend's son's bar mitzvah about 4 months after Dave died, and Brooke's a friend from high school. He took me out to the dance floor, and we danced, and like 1 minute in, I just burst into tears, and he kind of had to maneuver me out to the hallway, and I didn't know what I was crying about. And then I realized, oh my God, I felt happy for 1 minute, 4 months later. And I realized that I felt so guilty feeling happy. How can I be happy? How can I dance when Dave is gone? My brother-in-law, right around that time, called me and, crying on the phone. He said, all Dave ever wanted was for you and your children to be happy. Don't take that away from him in death. I had my brother-in-law telling me to be happy. I had my friend Brooke telling me to be happy. I had Adam telling me how. You have to start doing things again. Of course you're not happy. You work, you write in a journal about death, and you take care of your children who are crying all the time. Like, no one could be happy. But I realized that anything that was joyful was something I did with Dave. I didn't play Scrabble, I didn't watch TV, I was afraid to read a book. Like, I had to take those things back. And so, permission and encouragement, because everyone deserves joy. Whether you caused the tragedy, whether you didn't, whether it happened to you, whether it should never have happened to you, we deserve that. Everyone deserves that, and we can help them get there.
Joy's antidote. One last question before we go out to the audience. Is resilience closure?
No.
Okay.
There is no closure.
Yeah.
There is no done. There is no grief over. It is there. It comes back. But that is life.
We hear that, yeah, that's the thing.
Joy, the sadness exists because of the joy, and the joy because of the sadness.
Right. Let's take some questions from the audience. Before we do this, I need to set a couple of very quick ground rules. Number one, please confine your questions to the topic tonight, the book, option B. We do not want it's not the place to ask questions about, say, Donald Trump. Even though he might be option B for many of you. We do not want to hear no questions about politics or anything like that. That's not what we're here to talk about. Second, we want to talk about option B. No questions about Facebook and Facebook's VR strategy or how to get more likes or anything like that. All right? Second thing, I want to just give you a very, very quick reminder of what a question is. Okay? A question is a sentence in the interrogative form designed to elicit a reply. It typically begins with words like, what? When? Where? How? Why? It is not a speech. It is not a soliloquy. So let me then ask the question in the proper form. Who would like to be the first person to come up to the microphone and ask a question?
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for being here. My question is, were you a crier before Dave died?
Interesting.
Yes, but not so much. I didn't understand how I could cry this much. I actually said that to my sister, and she's a doctor. She said, well, your body is 70% water. I literally didn't think it was possible to cry as much. I didn't understand, and that was very, very helpful.
So I didn't really come to ask that question, but Dan sort of forced a question. Dave died on May 1st. My husband died on May 12th. I'm a crier. But what I wanted to say is just thank you for your candor. I'm in a Facebook group called the Hot Young Widows Club. Not that I'm hot or young, but that's not the point. And there's been a lot of discussion about you, of course, and I just think that, speaking from my own experience and being in Shloshim immediately, during the time that you were, and I think your public display of emotion and humanity helped the people around me support me. My son was 9 months old when my husband died. And I've really looked forward to tonight, and I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, and I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for your loss, and this is why we formed optionb.org. I hope you'll come on. There are already 3,600 people in Facebook groups around topics like loss, because I do think it's such a lonely experience, and one website's not going to change that, one book is not going to change that, but we're going to do all we can, and I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Maybe this was actually just the answer to the question, but can you point to a catalyst or a conversation that you had where you said, I want to put this in a book? What actually led to the book?
We've talked about this, and since it was after my journal, we don't have a journal, we don't know, or I don't remember exactly when. We've been writing together. Adam and I wrote a series in the New York Times of articles.
I have a theory.
Okay.
I wish I had better data on this one, but I think after the 30-day Facebook post, the outpouring of reactions was, I think we were all shocked by it. Not just the people supporting Sheryl, but also the people who came and supported each other. There was a mother who posted from the NICU that she had just lost one of her twins, and she was trying to sort of make the most of option B with the surviving twin. A stranger goes in and then posts, I lost a twin too, and we are going to get through this. And it made it clear how powerful it was to give voice to these things that normally silence us. And I think that over time, when more and more of those responses came in, it just became clear, well, there's more to share. And we can't fit it all in a Facebook post. Hey, we can't fit it all in a Facebook post, so we have to write a book.
Hi, Sheryl. Hi, Adam. Thank you for sharing your experiences. It's a joy to see you. Can you talk a little bit about how your experience has made you reconsider how you prioritize your time? As many of us in DC and in life always feel like there's not enough hours in the day, and how you've sort of rethought with this forced recognition of what's really important, how you prioritize your time differently.
It is such a good question, and after Dave died when we were traveling, and so one of the reactions my kids had is that if I traveled, I might die. So I went nowhere for 6 months, and then I only went once they decided that wasn't true, and I don't go a lot still. It's a big deal even to be here. And I had to clear my calendar. Now, granted, I'm senior, I have a lot more control than a lot of people, and so I stopped traveling, I did things. But here's what I realized. I realized how much of my time was doing things I didn't have to do or didn't really want to do. It gave other people at work opportunities to give the speeches I didn't give or deal with client meetings I didn't have. And you don't need an excuse as big as mine to do this. I stood in front of all the women of Facebook, 4,000 of them, a year later, and I said to everyone, they all clear calendars. Start as if you had nothing and put back on there what is absolutely critical for work, what is absolutely critical for you, and what you actually want to do. And I realized the periphery dinner, the periphery that, and that part of feeling like I only spend my time on what really matters has been great. And it really is worth, go home tonight, clear your calendar, and then put back on there what you want to do or have to do. And in terms of what people would say, you can literally say to them however you want, I started thinking about dying. Or, ready? I started thinking about what my life would be like if I had a year left. And this is how I'm gonna live. Or, I made a New Year's resolution to myself to spend more time with my children. You would be shocked if you are serious and willing to share an emotional reason for not doing something, how many people will forgive you for not going to something.
So, first of all, I want to thank you for this book because I think it's amazing. I've lost a parent several years ago, so I know obviously of all these feelings that you're talking about, and I just wonder, was there ever a moment when you were first going through this experience that you ever considered not sharing all of this, or was it kind of an automatic sort of response for you to want to, because it's so incredibly generous of you to share this with all of us, to help us understand and navigate it?
Oh, like this afternoon, I had that moment. No, I mean, the sharing was not what I set out to do. As the Sheloshim period ended, so it's the Jewish period of mourning for a spouse, it's only 30 days, but those 30 days were 30 years, and I felt so isolated. All the chit-chat, all the walking into the office and people saying hi was gone. And so I'd been journaling, and I stayed up and I wrote what, in the last few days before, what I would say if I would tell everyone how I was feeling. And I know that I work at Facebook, and I know I posted publicly, but I thought I was speaking to, you know, all the parents at school and all the people at Facebook. I didn't realize I was doing like a media. It was much, the pickup was, I didn't expect any of that.
Sure.
But what I was trying to say was, please start talking to me. I wrote in there, I feel like I was carrying an elephant. It was like the elephant in the room. And I just wanted the silence to stop. And I went to bed the night before the Sheloshim, and I was like, there's zero chance I'm posting this. It's way too personal. And then I woke up the next morning, and it was so bad. It was so awful. I said, well, it can't make things worse, might make them better. And it did. A friend of mine said she had been driving by my house, but never come in. She started coming in. People started talking to me again, and to each other. And then even with the most personal parts of the book, I mean, I really like the research sections, and I really like the stories of other people. There are amazing stories. Some of these people are here. They've done incredible things. They've recovered and rebuilt relationships from sexual abuse, from blindness that affects their jobs. I mean, they're incredible. But the personal parts were hard for me, and Adam pushed hard for me to share. And I know why I don't like it a lot. And I did a lean-in meeting with the DC Lean-In Circle right before this, and to be honest, it was really great to be talking about women in leadership. But I know why I'm doing this. I'm doing this because tens of thousands of people responded to that Facebook post, and they shared. And two women who I didn't know but did not know they worked together realized that they had both lost husbands. And because in 1 week, 3,600 people will join Facebook groups and send us notes saying, I've never had anywhere to talk. Dave was a really generous guy. At Dave's funeral, I've never seen this done, maybe it's been done before, someone on the stage, eulogy, said, raise your hand if Dave Goldberg changed your life. And a sea of hands went up. And if Dave were still alive, he would be doing so much good, but he's not here. And so if I can pull myself out of myself and share and admit how awful it was and still is and help other people, then I honor the life he lived. One of my favorite stories in the book is a guy named Joe Casper. He was a doctor, so he dealt with other people's death all the time, but then his son died. And he became a PhD student in psychology under Adam, and he came up with something he called co-destiny. He said that when he does good, he now counsels, he's still a doctor, but in his spare time, he counsels other bereaved parents. And he says that if I can do good in my son's Ryan life, I'm extending his life because I'm extending his legacy. And if this can help anyone, then Dave Goldberg just did one more good thing.
It's beautiful. Thank you.
My question is, knowing what you know now, how or would you change your advice in Lean In? And how has the perspective shifted in terms of being a professional and a wife and a mother?
In Lean In, I wrote about different forms of family, but I also wrote an entire chapter called Make Your Partner a Real Partner. And once I was parenting on my own, I really thought about that. And then I thought a lot about single moms. You know, 30% of single moms in this country are living in poverty, 40% if you're Black or Latina. And so we really need to do better, and we need to recognize that more deeply. I've thought a ton about I went through this with the resources I have. How many people go through this and are going to lose their jobs because they can't take care of a kid, because they're going to, not be able to pay a health care bill when someone gets sick? Cancer is a huge reason why people go bankrupt. And so I would redo that. I actually posted this on Mother's Day last year, and I apologized. I said, I did not get this.
Unfortunately, we have time for only, I think, 2 questions. So let's go you, and then you.
Great. Thank you so much. You spoke a lot about resilience, gratitude, and resilience being a muscle, implying that it can be taught, not just post-tragedy or trauma, but in fact, beforehand. How would you take some of the lessons of your book or from your work as a psychologist and your own personal experiences, and how can you think about scaling this, not just in terms of on a one-on-one level or in therapy or personal trauma, but looking at conflict-ridden societies and all sorts of problems, both domestically and overseas? And not a political statement, but maybe your option B, since we're in Washington, should be to run for office, because you'd be extraordinary. We'd be lucky to have that.
Not running for office. But we are trying to build optionb.org, and we can talk about it.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's most exciting on optionb.org is there's not only educational information, but there are groups for all different kinds of hardships. Sheryl talked about the isolation of grief and loss, but isolation is common across all different kinds of adversity. And one of the things we know is that there's such a thing as collective resilience, that in groups and communities, people actually they develop strength together that they can't find on their own. And one of the building blocks of that is shared experience, right? Feeling like somebody else gets what I went through. And then one of the other things that I think a group really needs is shared power, to believe that they can shape their own destiny and their fate moving forward. And if you think about how this applies to conflict-ridden societies, for example, when you study the most resilient of them, what you see is that they tend to actually give power to the people who are on the ground dealing with the problems. And having local leaders being given influence, being given access to resources is really critical. And so our hope is that as people connect on optionb.org, that they're going to build that power together, and they're going to be able to drive some of the change that we would like to see.
Great.
Okay. Well, this is for both of you. So I'm an MBA student, so my interest is kind of a little bit different, but you've done a lot of research into resilience, and I was curious, how could you bring this to the corporate world, or how would you speak about this to business school students? And I know that Facebook is starting to implement a new policy from an HR perspective, so I'd love to hear you guys talk about that.
So we wrote a whole chapter on resilient organizations. I'll answer the Facebook question and let him talk about that. Leave, paid family leave. We are the only developed country in the world without paid maternity leave. We're behind Saudi Arabia. That's not a good place to be. We're one of the only countries in the world without paid medical family leave, and that's unacceptable. Bereavement leave is a really big deal. Very few people get paid time off at all, and usually it's 3 days. So at Facebook, we gave, before Dave died, 10 days for immediate family and 5 days for extended, and we doubled it to 20 and 10. And we extended family leave, really based on the experience I had and knowing we needed to do better working with my team. We need better corporate policy, and we need better public policy, and people deserve it.
So about 10 years ago, I studied a Fortune 500 company that created this program that seemed like one of a kind, which was an employee support program. They had employees donate money, and then the company would match all contributions for any kind of support that you might need in a difficult situation. It could be a loss, could be a medical expense you couldn't afford, a natural disaster destroyed your house. And I found that employees became much more committed to the company as a result, because they were proud to work for a company that had a heart, where leaders really cared about people. And they were also grateful to know that there was a safety net. If they ran into trouble, that someone would have their back. And the program was run by Borders, and then they went out of business. And great, that's helpful. But the good news is that a bunch of companies heard about it, and they were excited by it, and they went and copied it after learning from Borders. Domino's Pizza did it, The Limited did it. I think this should exist in every organization. There's no reason why that safety net shouldn't be available to every single person who has a job.
Fantastic. So let's just wrap up here. Sheryl, you mentioned that you have this ritual at your family dinner table where you say 1, best thing about the day, worst thing about the day, something you're grateful for. Would you guys be willing to do that here?
This is my worst right now.
Well, I'll take that as a yes. You already answered one out of the three.
Check. Yeah, I'll say...
Best, worst, and something you're grateful for from today.
Sure. I will say you're allowed to pass on the worst. And I don't think there's a worst today, so I'm going to skip that one. Best, I think one of the highlights for me today was actually hearing Sheryl talk in an interview today about how she's embraced her identity as a widow, saying that's not all of who I am, but it is a part of who I am, and recognizing that helps me connect with other people who are widows too. And I thought that was really powerful. It wasn't something we had spoken about before, and I walked away both, I guess, moved by it and also learning something from it, that sometimes it's helpful to accept an unwanted identity. Grateful to have a chance to share these ideas and talk about some of the most important things in life that we normally don't get to talk about, and to do it with an amazing group of people and a wildly entertaining moderator and a great friend.
Sheryl, best and most grateful.
My best thing of the day is that my parents and some of my closest friends are here and some of my great colleagues from work.
And let's end on gratitude.
My worst is always the same, and it still is the reason we're here. And I'm grateful, and I'll explain this for a minute, that many moments I'm walking without pain. And this is my mom's wisdom. My mom said that most of her life she walked without pain normally, and then as she got older, her hip disintegrated and every step was painful. And then she got her hip replaced, and all of a sudden, every step wasn't painful, but she appreciated it. And now, to this day, every step she takes without pain, she appreciates it. Having lived what I lived, and still live sometimes when it comes back, in the moments when I'm just okay, I'm sitting here looking at you, I'm not crying. I'm walking without pain, but now I know it, and I'm grateful for that.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sheryl Sandberg, Adam Grant. Give them a big round of applause. Thank you, guys.